Hello again, folks. We're getting towards the end here. There aren't too many more chapters. Today I'm going to talk very briefly about chapter 24. There's a lot of chemistry in here, and to be honest, there isn't a lot that I can teach you just by talking. Also, I have a cat yelling in my ear over here. Sorry about that. I've been having some audio troubles trying to record my voice, and I don't know what is to do about that. I'd like to be able to use a microphone, but I'm not able to do that either for some reason. Okay, this is a complex chapter, title even. Water, electrolyte, and acid-base balance. This involves a lot of different organ systems and a lot of chemistry. I just realized too, a little bit late here, that as you all probably know, I have office hours scheduled 5 different times each week. That would be a very good time to talk to me one-on-one or two-on-one if you're having some trouble with part of any of these chapters. I can explain it to you in different words, perhaps, and help you. Okay, now please print off, as always, a copy of the study guide and the list of figures and tables that I have provided for you. Section 24.1 is titled Water Balance. Water balance is the average daily water intake and loss. And to be in balance, these two must be equal. Let's look at some statistics and figures. Young adult men, your author says, average 55 to 60% water. Now this is blood, this is intracellular water, this is extracellular water, water everywhere in the body. Women average slightly less than that because of having more adipose tissue. The total body water of a 70 kilogram man, 70 kilogram being about 150 pounds, is almost 40 liters. That is about 10 gallons of water, and that is quite a bit. So you can see the importance of keeping the balance. Your author then goes in to describe fluid compartments. 60% or 65% of the fluid in our body is found intracellularly. The other 35% is extracellular. Remember that fluid can easily go from one of these compartments to another by the process of osmosis. If you will look at, please, figure 24.1 and 24.2, this will give you a lot more information. First, about the movement of water between the different compartments, as well as a typical daily gain and loss of fluid. There are various things that regulate both the intake and the output of water, and that is what is very important then in maintaining this balance. Figure 24.3 is described dehydration, thirst, and rehydration. This shows you a lot of different factors that are involved in if you lose body fluid, you become dehydrated, thirsty, and then you rehydrate by taking in more fluid, and that will then restore homeostasis and this fluid balance. There are various osmoreceptors. These are receptors, neurological receptors in the body that can sense exactly the composition of both the intracellular and extracellular fluid. And these tell the brain then whether we need more or less fluid. The next on page 928 is a discussion of the regulation of body output or of fluid output. Now the output is primarily through the kidneys. And one of the primary factors involved in this water output is a hormone called ADH, which stands for antidiuretic hormone. This particular hormone is synthesized in the hypothalamus and secreted from the posterior part of the pituitary gland. He also goes on to discuss sweating and the loss of fluid there, problems with fluid excess. Looking at table 24.1 on page 930 is an excellent way to let your brain see all of the different forms of fluid imbalance. Section 24.2 talks about electrolyte balance. Do you remember what the definition is of an electrolyte? Very simply stated, an electrolyte is a charged particle, either positive or negative, that can be found anywhere in the body. The most important ones that we are going to discuss in this chapter and in anatomy and physiology in general are the balance between the intracellular fluid and the extracellular fluid, specifically the blood. The primary positive ions, also called cations, are sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and hydrogen. The major anions that are negatively charged are chloride, bicarbonate, and phosphates. Your author then goes on to discuss each of the primary electrolytes by itself. And I want you, of course, to read through this, try to memorize the importance, for example, of sodium, how it is one of the absolute most important and principal anions that maintains the resting membrane potential in cells. Figure 24.7 shows you the electrolyte concentrations in both blood plasma and in intracellular fluids of the primary electrolytes. And you can see very easily, I think, that the primary ones are sodium, potassium, and chloride. Okay, just reading on and looking at the various figures, you will see discussions first of sodium and then of potassium. Figure 24.9 on page 933 shows you what a potassium imbalance can do and how serious this can be. Chloride, calcium, magnesium, and phosphates are then described also in detail. I want you to know various things about these electrolytes. Which ones are most prominent in the blood and in the intracellular fluids? Which ones are primary in maintaining the difference in potential, the resting membrane potential of our neurons, of our muscle cells, and of other cells in the body? What some of the physiologic problems are if we have too much or too little of some of these particular electrolytes. The last section is titled Acid-Base Balance. I want you to know the definition of pH. pH is a small letter P, capital letter H. Our body fluids should be kept between 7.35, very slightly acidic, to 7.45, which is very, very slightly alkaline. Now, the major ion that is used to define pH is the hydrogen ion. The more hydrogen ions that are present, the lower the pH will be. And the lower the pH, the stronger is the acid. pH goes from 0 to 14 on a logarithmic scale, and where 7 is perfectly neutral. A weak acid has a number slightly less than 7, perhaps 5 to 7. A stronger acid has lower numbers. A weak base has numbers of perhaps 7, 8, and 9, or a strong base is higher than 9. We have various buffering systems, both in the kidneys and in the lungs, that help our bodies to maintain a homeostasis of our body pH. I want you to read about the bicarbonate buffer system, the phosphate buffer system, and the protein buffer system that are described on page 937. You will also see respiratory control of pH. This is done by the lungs, as well as renal control of pH that is done via the kidneys. Figures 2410 and 2411 are very detailed pictures. They're excellent if you have a photographic memory, or we can discuss them in more detail in office hours. But they show you, one, the secretion and neutralization of hydrogen ions, first in 24.10. This would be if the body is too acidic. And then further on 2411 is more about acid buffering in the urine. Of course, the kidneys can also maintain homeostasis to some extent if the bloodstream or the intracellular fluids become too alkaline. Okay. Table 24.3 on page 942 is an excellent source of information. It is for this entire chapter. It is titled Some Relationships Between Fluid, Electrolyte, and Acid-Base Imbalances. You can study this and go over this very, very easily, very quickly, just before you take your unit exam covering this chapter. Reminder, I am available for 5 different hours each week in my set office hours, and you should by now know what hours I'm scheduled. You can find that if you go back through my messages very, very easily. Okay, that is all about Chapter 24. Thanks for your attention.